Queen's about to get all patriotic up on here, folks. God save the Queen. Yes. No matter who's in charge, I don't care if King Charles is in charge now. It's always God save the Queen for us here at PLD Projects. PLD Projects presents Crown Jewels. God save the Queen. Coming up now. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to PLD Projects Crown Jewels. I'm your host, PLD, and this is the podcast where I take you on a journey through every song in the Queen catalog, including solo works, and we try to figure out which version of every song is the crown jewel version, the best version to put into our ultimate playlist. I also give you some history. I may also check and see if this song hits my top 10 Queen songs of all time. It's a fun time. This week's song, God Save the Queen. That's right. It's the UK national anthem. So it's obviously not written by the boys, but it is arranged by one Brian May. Now, after last week's gargantuan episode of Bohemian Rhapsody, over an hour long, the longest crown jewels I've had, this week's it's going to be a lot shorter because there's not as many versions of God Save the Queen out there. We really only have the album version from A Night at the Opera, a single version, which doesn't really change a whole lot, a piano demo done by Brian and commented over, and the one live version that actually is them playing live, 2002 Party in the Palace. So just Brian and Roger there, but that actually fits the song because Brian and Roger are the only two on the actual studio version. Brian plays guitars, Roger plays drums, timpani, and orchestral cymbals. Now, if you look at the live album, you'll see the track at the end of every concert because that's what they did, but really it was just the taped version of it. They'd play this out while they did their bows, and like in the Magic Tour, and Freddie would come out with a big cape and crown and everything else. So no reason listening to the studio version with some class behind it. Now, it was recorded to use at the end of concerts during the Sheer Heart Attack sessions, and the band then decided later on to just use it to close the biggest album they've ever had in their career. To quote Freddie, or 1976 The Record Mirror, that's something we've had in our stage act for a long while, you know? And when we were recording Night at the Opera, I felt it just lent itself. The whole thing is done by Brian. It's all Brian's guitar, every bit of it, with cymbals and things. I told you we have nobody else coming in. We don't use synthesizers. Brian can get all those sounds with his guitar. Of course, Freddie wasn't there, so maybe he missed that Roger was actually on it as well. But let's get into the listening part of the podcast. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look below in the description. You'll find links to YouTube versions of all the versions we're going to tackle today. So what we'll do is I'll have you pause. You go find the one we're going to discuss. You listen to it. You come back. You listen to me talk about it. We're going to start with the album version first. From Night at the Opera. Here's God Save the Queen. Well, there you have it. God Save the Queen as recorded by Queen. I don't know about you, but as a rock and roll fan, when I think of a guitarist performing the national anthem, my thoughts slide back to Jimi Hendrix doing the Star Spangled Banner at Woodstock. But I happened to learn today a cool, interesting fact that I was unaware of. He played the Isle of Wight in 1970, and he performed God Save the Queen as well. Now, we know that Queen are big fans of Jimi Hendrix, so it's quite possible that Brian was either there or had at least heard Jimi perform it, and maybe it inspired him. I don't really know that. That's my own speculation, perhaps. But either way, Brian does get to do his own version for A Night at the Opera, and it's a cool version. Before we go too much further, I did want to note that I'm not going to be talking about the single version in the podcast per se. I'm not going to break it down, have you listen to it rather. But the YouTube link is down below still if you want to listen to it. I'm just going to note right here that the only difference is in the beginning. In the beginning, the album version, the drum roll is faded in. On the single version, it starts at full volume. It extends the song out a couple of seconds, but that's really the only difference. The rest of it is the same. So take that. Your miles may vary. But let's talk about the performance there. Great performance. Pure Brian orchestrations. It feels so full of pomp and circumstance. And if there's any song that deserves to have the full Queen pomp and circumstance, it's the national anthem. It's God Save the Queen. Brian does his usual thing where he has different levels of guitar on each side of the stereo. Some notes are here, some notes are here. And at the end, they have this nice little wandering guitar in the middle as it kind of works itself down and slows itself down to a finish with Roger's timpani playing there. It's really quick, really short version of the song, but it's an excellent version. Now, since we're not going to listen to the single version, I'm going to point you next to the piano demo version. Now, this comes from the Making of a Night at the Opera DVD. They had in like 2005, I believe it was. This is why you're going to hear Brian talking over it. So it's not a really crystal clear version of it. Brian's letting you know what was going on, and it's even less of a demo and more of a working version of it. Brian basically laid a piano track down, not very well, not even really caring if it sounded too well, just to have as kind of like a base for when he played guitar to kind of keep track and keep time and where it was going. You don't hear the piano at all on the final version, so it's interesting to hear this version that was actually recorded right at the same time. So let's take a listen to that quickly, and then we'll come back and briefly talk about it. There you go. There's the piano demo. Not much to listen to, honestly. More of a fun piece of trivia than a rather actual song because Brian is talking all over it. But it's kind of fun to hear him talk about it. He's talking about Mike Stone. That's the Mike he mentioned, Mike Stone engineering the album. Nice little commentary between Mike and Brian thing where Mike even kind of gives a couple of jabs at Brian, his lack of piano playing prowess, so to speak. I'm not going to put this this is gonna be my last. This is gonna be the least favorite version, the least one, not even close to the Crown Jewel version. But it's definitely an interesting curio to hear. So I wanted to take a listen to that. So, all right, let's move on then to the final version we're gonna listen to today. Again, in that description below, "Party at the Palace." We'll talk about that one when we get back. How cool was that, really? I mean, how cool was that? Brian used to tell a story about this. He guessed basically this is the part of the palace 2002, the Queen's Golden Jubilee. There was a recent Jubilee also that Queen and Adam Lambert performed at. This was back in 2002. I guess the organizers had called him up and said they'd like them to do a version of God Save the Queen, strolling through the Buckingham Palace, like staterooms and things. Brian, I guess, went to bed that night. Had a thought that he didn't want to be in the Buckingham Palace rooms. He wanted to be up on the rooftop, being like the Pied Piper up there, as the whole crowd underneath was ready to go, ready to rock out. And so he rang them up, and they said, "Yeah, sure, we can do that." I guess there has a lot of problems that day as far as like getting to work. They got up there, they couldn't get the feed from the orchestra right. Brian couldn't see Michael Kamen conducting. The TVs were too shining in the daytime. But they eventually did get the orchestra feed up there, so he got to play with this big feed from the orchestra on one side, his amps on the other. He was standing like over everybody else from the big crowd. And, the place went nuts. I love the orchestra build up. Roger's playing timpani below. They're crashing through. It is the most dramatic version they could have done. It's probably the version that Brian almost would have wanted to have done back in the day if it wasn't for himself doing everything. So for the first real live rendition, this is a beaut. This is a beaut. Absolutely. I love this one quite a bit. So yeah, that's the last one we're going to listen to. So I guess it's now time to move on to our crown jewel. So this will be a quick ranking for the crown jewels. At the bottom of the list, we're going to have that piano demo. It's not even really a real version of the song. Next up, it's going to have the album version. Why? Because if you're going to have the difference between the album version and the single version, I get a little more of the full song. I'll take that. Right? Why not? But that obviously leaves my favorite one. I don't think I did that very well. I'll take the Part of the Palace version every single time. Part of the Palace version by far is my favorite version. Now, as you know, for making our ultimate playlist on Spotify, this version doesn't exist on Spotify, unfortunately. So I have to make it in my own for an upload. So if you're gonna have an alternate version there, I will put the album version as the alternate version because I don't think the single version is on there either. So we'll just use the album version as the alternate version for the this Queen Spotify playlist for that fact. I would make that my crown jewel. That was definitely Part of the Palace. Speaking of Part of the Palace, I should point out if you didn't get a chance, it's available on DVD. I'm sure you might be able to stream it somewhere. I'm not sure. I should have checked that out. But it's a great concert featuring a lot of British royalty at the time. It opened up, like I said, with Brian May and Roger doing "God Save the Queen." I heard Ricky Martin. They had Atomic Kitten, Marvin Gaye. The Queen did actually have another performance. They had a Queen doing Radio Gaga, the We Will Rock You with the Champions of Bohemian Rhapsody. We mentioned that earlier, Bohemian Rhapsody with the We Will Rock You cast. Roger Taylor sang Radio Gaga. They had some guests for a bunch of the songs, but it was really kind of a cool thing. They also had Shirley Bassey doing Goldfinger, had Brian Adams doing Everything I Do It For You. One of the cool versions, though, for my sake and for this podcast sake, is that they had Joe Cocker doing With a Little Help from My Friends, and Brian played guitar on that, which is pretty cool. And of course, Paul McCartney came on and finished it off stuff, and the whole cast, including Brian and Roger, did All You Need Is Love and Hey Jude. So that's kind of a cool ending. So pretty cool overall. I did enjoy that concert. So if you get a chance. But let's move on then now to our rating of the track and to see if it fits into my top 10. We go 1 out of 1 to 11 here on PLD Projects, which is always turn up to 11. I'm going to give this one a solid 9. It's perfect for what it does. It's perfect for what it's supposed to be. It's just a short track. It's a short track that I wouldn't really pick to listen to because it's not a song per se. It's more of a emotion. It's more of a feeling. It's more of an ending, more of a bookend, so to speak. So that's why I got to knock it down a few points to say it's not going to be compared to some of the other big numbers up there, which means it does not slide into my top 10. But that's okay. That's okay. Well, that'll do it for us this week on Crown Jewels. Appreciate you guys sticking around. Next week, of course, we do the Night at the Opera tour. So talking about the live concerts from the era, including some special songs not found anywhere else. And of course, that means the week after we go into the next album, which is the sister album to A Night at the Opera, really, A Day at the Races. That's for a couple of weeks. I want to say thank you so much for listening. If this is your first time here, click that like, click that subscribe. Go to my main channel, PLD Projects main channel, click that like and click how to subscribe. Try to move forward as best we can, like to get the party, keep the party going. And if you'd like to support even further, PLD Projects has a Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Projects. In fact, you can join such folks as Austin Cadell, Jeremiah Morris, Matthew Kearns, Brandon Buckingham, Jeff Alterman, and Kelly W. Could not do this without you guys. I really appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for keeping the lights on. It really means the world to me. Of course, we had a great hangout earlier today when I was recording. I got some other stuff coming out as well. And you can find a lot of good stuff on PLD Projects. I have a lot of stuff that's in the works. That's going on now. A lot of movie news. Not movie news, movie podcast, TV podcast as well. So check it out. But that's it for this week, folks. And stay tuned for next week. And until then, keep yourself alive. God save the Queen. Bye.